Ladies and gentlemen, the topic for the Truth Forum today is NED is in fact a subagent of CIA. But we divide the content of this topic in two parts. Earlier, we already presented to you the first part, and now we are going to do the second part. The US government not only deployed the agents of NED to many allied countries, US government also advised her allied countries to copy NED to set up their own foundation for democracy. Taiwan's Foundation for Democracy, abbreviated to TFD, is a standard model for this scheme. So TFD is nearly 100% funded by governmental budget, and TFD's operation is under the instruction of Taiwan's Foreign Affairs Ministry and National Security Bureau. So TFD is indeed the tool of Taiwan's government to promote the fake democracy and real Taiwanese independence. Namely, TFD operates as a partner of NED at an equal position. But in fact, TFD is almost a subagent of NED because United States is the head of international mafia and NED is the imperial commissioner for United States government. In the name of democratization, NED went to allied countries of the United States to foment riots, to manufacture wars. This kind of secret missions are almost uncountable. Let's take a look at Hong Kong. Since the Tiananmen incident occurred in the year of 1989, Hong Kong became the most important base among international overseas Chinese societies for China's democratization movement. But in about 2 decades, we did not hear anybody advocating Hong Kong independence. But since 2012, United States declared so-called pivot to Asia policy, which means United States government decided that they have to slap down China to protect her solo superpower position, and at the same time, we start hearing Hong Kong independence voice. And this kind of voice grew very drastically in a few years until it became the mainstream voice in Hong Kong's chaos in the year of 2019. Very rare people realized why Hong Kong independence can grow so fast in a short time. Well, because NED collaborate with Taiwanese independence people. They sent many Taiwanese independence scholars to Hong Kong to sow the seeds of independence thoughts and trained Hong Kong students with so-called peaceful revolution techniques. Among Taiwanese independence scholars who were sent to Hong Kong to train Hong Kong students, there was an outstanding leader in Taiwan's labor movement, Mr. Chien NED, whom I respect highly. Mr. Chien often openly claimed that the so-called nonviolence protest skills he taught and led was in fact developed from the formal training he received in early years from CIA. Lastly, let's take a look at Ukraine, a really devastated country at this moment. But it really should not be like this. Then what caused this tragedy? Of course, it is Russia's invasion. But what is the reason for Russia's invasion? Well, when Soviet Russia decomposed in the year of 1991, Russia's President Yeltsin and President of the United States Bill Clinton had very friendly relationship, and they agreed that Russians would allow all satellite countries to claim independence. But United States and European Union should not drag these countries into NATO or EU. Instead, both sides agreed that they should help these satellite countries remain neutral. So between Russia and NATO countries, there will be a belt of buffer zone, and this belt can avoid direct conflicts between Russia and NATO. But only 5-6 years after Soviet Russia fell apart, the attitude of the United States changed very drastically, because a few American scholars proposed a new theory. They claimed that to promote peace and security of Europe, NATO should expand eastward. And I highly suspect that these scholars were bribed by American ammunition companies to propose such an absurd theory. The eastward expansion of NATO for sure posed serious threats to Russia's national security. And how can a strategy threatening Russia promote peace and security of Europe? However, U.S. government did change their strategy on Russia. NED went to almost every country which used to be Russia's dependency to establish the democratic system. Then, U.S. government will encourage them to join EU and NATO. So in 1 or 2 decades, there has been more than 10 countries joining EU or NATO. Finally, even Ukraine demonstrated her desire to join EU and NATO in the year of 2014. That was the time Mearsheimer predicted Russia's invasion, because he clearly sensed the Russians' anger on Ukraine's hostility. Today, Ukraine has been devastated, though Ukrainians demonstrated incredible courage to resist Russia. But what do they get for their sacrifice? Their sacrifice only achieved one purpose for the United States, which is to weaken Russia. Just like the Minister of National Defense of the United States, General Austin, praised Ukrainians. He said, "You already successfully weakened Russia." So Ukrainians' horrible sacrifice only served the purpose for Americans to weaken Russia. At last, when Ukrainians run out of bullets and missiles, Zelensky asked Biden for more ammunition and money. But Biden replied in anger. He said, "We don't owe you anything." I think Zelensky and all Ukrainians ought to wake up at this moment. They should learn with very high tuition that they were all fooled by Americans. They fought to death with Russia only for Americans' interests. So from above-mentioned examples, we can see that so-called democracy posted high by Americans is indeed a big fraud, especially when NED, in reality a subagent of CIA deployed over the whole world to promote the American-style democracy and their real purpose is to make their allied countries their dogs to bark and bite for Americans, or eventually became sacrifice for the interests of Americans. And U.S. government has designed a formula for this kind of fraud game so they can duplicate it and play it again and again in many allied countries. And the whole game is only to serve one purpose, which is to maximize the national interest of the United States. And the great ideals of democracy and human rights are nothing but meaningless slogans and absolutely big lies. Today, we Taiwanese people ought to wake up. Otherwise, our only destiny is to die for Americans' interests. And today's Ukraine will be tomorrow's Taiwan. We Taiwanese people not only need to wake up ourselves, we also need to wake up the whole world from Americans' fraud game. Otherwise, not only Taiwan, but the real world peace will be buried in Americans' fraud. Well, that'll be all for today. Thank you very much.